My name is Sadie, and I'm 15 years old. That night, I ran out of the house into the freezing rain, blood still smeared red on my wrist where it had been gripped too hard. The man my mother forced me to call my new dad had just whispered in my ear that if I kept contacting my real father, the one locked up for murder, he would make me disappear. Quietly, as if I had never existed. I didn't cry. I just walked through the rain, shaking, trying to swallow down the panic. I went to the public library, the only place still open. In my pocket, I clutched the one thing I had, an old USB I had just found in the storage room that had been abandoned since my father's arrest. I plugged it into the computer, my heart pounding as if someone were standing right behind me, and then the screen lit up. A grainy video appeared the back area of the bar, on the very night my dad was accused. The image was chillingly clear. The first man to appear wasn't my father. It was Victor, the man my mother was about to marry. Have you ever suspected that someone in your family was hiding a terrible secret, that the only person who believed you was the one sitting behind bars? If you've ever felt isolated, forced into silence in your own home, leave a comment below. Share your feelings, hit like, subscribe so I can tell the whole story. Because what happened after this was darker than you think. I sat in the corner of the library, the yellowish light falling across the old wooden table, while the screen stayed frozen on that frame, Victor stepping out of the bar bathroom, minutes before my dad was arrested. My heart was about to explode, not only from fear, but from a fury I couldn't put into words. I still remember clearly the day they took my dad away. They handcuffed him right in front of me while he was still wearing his gray shirt, sleeves stained with blood. He shouted that he was innocent. The police didn't listen. My mother stood behind me, gripping my hand tight like she was afraid I'd run after him, then bent down and whispered in my ear, "You don't need to look anymore. That man is no longer your father." I didn't understand. I was only 14. After that, everything moved fast. My mother didn't cry, she just cleared away every trace of my father within a week. Family pictures vanished from the frames. The closet was empty. When I asked, she said, "We need to start over." And then Victor appeared. At first, he came as a friend, helping my mother through grief. A polite man who could cook, always smiling, always showing up with fresh flowers. He made dinner, cleaned the house, even fixed the leaky faucet my father had promised to repair long ago. I remember the way my mother looked at him with gratitude, like Victor was the miracle she'd been waiting for, but only I saw the way he looked at me when her back was turned. By day, Victor was the good man. By night, when it was just the two of us, his eyes turned cold. Sometimes when I came home from school, he was already at the door, murmuring, "Your dad isn't here anymore. This house needs a new man." I told my mother, "He makes me uncomfortable." She set her coffee cup down and sighed. "You're too sensitive. Victor is trying to connect with you. Give him a chance." I couldn't say more. She didn't want to hear it. Every time I said something negative about Victor, she reacted like I had insulted her personally. "Do you think I haven't suffered enough? Your father's in prison. Do you know how much pain I've been through?" I stayed silent. One evening after dinner, Victor pulled out a small blue ring box. "Not for my mother. For me. We're a new family, Sadie," he smiled, eyes glinting. "Your mom and I are getting married, and I'll be your new dad. Call me Dad." I froze. Inside was a simple silver ring, small enough to fit my pinky. I didn't take it. I looked at my mother. She nodded. "Call Victor Dad. We have to put the past behind us." I pulled my hand away from the box. I said nothing. My mother looked at me like I had done something shameful. After that, everything changed. Victor stopped pretending. I woke up night after night with the sense that someone was standing at my door. The cold wasn't from an open window. It was inside my chest. Once, I cracked my eyes open and saw his shadow in the doorway, standing still like a statue. When I flipped the light on, he was gone, as if he had never been there. Another time, while my mother was at the grocery store, Victor knocked on my bedroom door and asked to come in. I said no. He opened it anyway. I stood blocking the space between the door and my desk, forcing myself to stay calm. Your new dad just wants to see how you're doing. You're looking more like your mother every day, but prettier. His eyes swept over me, dissecting me. I stood still, fists clenched behind my back. When my mother came home, I told her again. She just laughed bitterly. Victor is only trying to be friendly. Don't ruin my happiness. I started living like a prisoner. Go to school, come straight home, no friends, no privacy. I secretly created a new email account at school to write to my dad. He was still alive, in prison but alive. His replies were short, but every word made me want to cry. He said he missed me, that he was innocent, that he suspected Victor. In one email, he wrote, "If you're still in that house, check the old cabinet under the stairs." I left something before they arrested me. So, on the night Victor took my mother out to celebrate their 6-month anniversary, I snuck into the basement. The flashlight on my phone flickered over dust and cobwebs. I searched through every cardboard box. Finally, behind a crate of old books, there was a loose wooden panel. I pulled it out. Inside, a plastic-wrapped bundle, a USB, and a brown leather notebook. I shoved them under my hoodie, my heart pounding like a drum. That night, I walked to the library, half an hour from the house, in the rain. And when the video on the USB played Victor in the bathroom, pulling something from his jacket before walking out like nothing happened, I froze. My father came in after. Minutes later, the police arrived. Everyone believed my father was the killer. But that video, why was he there? I whispered. In that moment, I understood. It wasn't just about inconvenience. It wasn't just about feeling replaced. I was living with the man who destroyed my family. And my mother, the person I believed would protect me from everything evil, was the one who invited him in, handed him the keys, and turned her back when I begged her to listen. Since finding that USB, I haven't slept through a single night. Each time the wall clock ticks slowly in the dark, I lie still, eyes fixed on the ceiling, ears straining for footsteps in the hallway. I don't know when Victor will strike, but I know for certain he knows I'm hiding something. I can't slip up. From now on, every move, every word has to be calculated. I kept writing to my dad through the secret account at school. I named it Echo Chin, like a code only he would recognize. Each time I walked into the library to send an email, I felt like I was entering an underground base, the only place I could breathe. I found the USB, I wrote. The video is grainy, but I'm sure it's him. My dad replied faster than usual the next day. You might not be the only one who suspects him, but be careful. If he knows you have evidence, he'll do anything to get it back. I copied each word onto paper and hid it deep inside a history book, the kind Victor would never touch. From then on, I started searching for anything else my dad had left behind. In the next email, he wrote, I hid another notebook in the storage room behind the old wooden cabinet. If you're brave enough, find it. But don't let your mom or Victor see you. That storage room was on the first floor, next to the kitchen. The worst part was Victor usually sat at the dining table nearby every afternoon, pretending to read the paper while his eyes kept glancing at that door. I couldn't risk it. I needed the right chance. A week later, the chance came when my mother threw a small party for Victor's birthday. She invited a few close friends, all of whom praised Victor as kind, family-oriented. I was put in charge of preparing the cake in the kitchen. Both Victor and my mother were busy entertaining in the living room. I slipped into the storage room, my heart pounding. In the dim light, I pushed the heavy cabinet aside. Behind it was a loose panel. I pried it open with a fruit knife. A cloth bundle fell to the floor. I picked it up. Inside was an old brown notebook, dust clinging to its edges. I barely had time to glance at it before my mother called. Sadie, is the cake ready? I quickly stuffed the notebook into my hoodie pocket, put the panel back, shoved the cabinet in place, and rushed to the kitchen. Victor was standing in the doorway, staring straight at me. He smiled. "My girl seems a little sneaky today, huh?" I forced a laugh. "Just slow with the frosting." He didn't reply, but his gaze cut through me. That night, I waited until everyone was asleep before opening the notebook. The first pages were work schedules from the bar, but further in, the writing grew frantic. March 4th. I saw Victor outside the bar at midnight, smoking, staring inside. I was cleaning up, not the first time I've seen him there. March 6th. Denise left early, said she had a parent-teacher meeting. Came back late, smelled of strange perfume. That night, Victor texted me wrong number. He wrote, "She said she'll handle it soon." Don't worry. Deleted it right away, but I saw it. My hands were clammy. Those notes proved my dad had begun to suspect long before, but never had the chance to investigate further. As I reached the last line, I heard my door creak open. I shoved the notebook under my pillow, breathing slow. Victor stepped in, without knocking. "Up late tonight?" I faked a yawn. "Just reading." He moved closer, eyes locked on mine, voice flat. "Your mom says you behaved well today, but I still feel you're hiding something." I turned away, silent. He stood there for a moment, then left, leaving the door ajar. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I found the storage room had been ransacked. The books I used to hide letters were no longer in place. It felt like someone had flipped through every page. I knew then, Victor was suspicious. I had to be more careful. But I also knew time was running out. If I moved too slow, Victor would uncover everything. And when that happened, no one could save me. I was grounded for 3 straight days after my mother accused me of being rude to Victor at dinner. The real reason? I didn't smile at one of his old high school stories. My mother called it disrespectful, while I just clenched the fork in my hand so tight my fingers turned white. For 3 days, I couldn't leave the house, couldn't use a phone, and wasn't allowed to lock my bedroom door. Victor prowled the hallway like a wolf. On the 3rd morning, my mother had to leave early for surgery at the hospital. Victor was still asleep when I woke. I tiptoed down the hallway, bare feet silent on the old wooden floor. I climbed up to the attic, clutching the small flashlight I had hidden in my sleeve. The space was thick with dust, the smell of rot and old wood dizzying. Every step creaked, my heart racing faster. I knelt at the far right corner, where my dad used to store things. Years ago, he'd brought me up here to find the Christmas decorations, and I remembered him hiding a wooden box against the wall. I pushed aside the faded cloths, stacking them neatly, until my hand hit a dark wooden box covered in cobwebs. I opened it. Inside was an old notebook, an envelope of yellowed receipts, and a small black USB wrapped in a zip bag. I tucked everything into my jacket pocket, covered the cloth again, then tiptoed downstairs, each step like walking on thin ice. Just as I pushed the attic door down, the sound of the coffee machine came from the kitchen. Victor was awake. I hurried to my room, stuffed everything inside a pillow, then walked out to the kitchen as if nothing had happened. Victor stood at the sink, coffee cup in hand, his eyes scanning me from head to toe. "Sleep well?" I pressed my lips together. It was okay. He nodded, took a sip, and set the cup on the counter. "Your mom says we'll visit Aunt Rachel this weekend. That means you and I will have some time to get closer." I froze, gripping my backpack strap tight. I nodded stiffly and retreated to my room as quickly as possible. In the locked room, I drew the curtains and opened my old computer. I slid the USB into the slot. The screen showed a single folder, titled Chin, Bonrebe PM. I clicked. The video began with a dim hallway behind the bar, grainy under weak light, the camera fixed at a high angle. I recognized Victor instantly. He entered the frame at 9:47 p.m. His stride was leisurely, his long black coat swaying past his knees. He stopped in front of the men's restroom door, glanced around, then walked in. 4 minutes later, my father appeared. Wearing his bartender uniform, a towel still tucked on his arm, he hurried toward the restroom. His face looked tired but calm. When he came out just 2 minutes later, he was covered in blood. His left hand trembled as he turned to someone outside the frame and shouted, "Call an ambulance." I held my breath, replaying Victor's entrance again and again. The part that made my skin crawl was this. During those 4 minutes, Victor never walked back out. He never appeared in any frame after entering that room. I opened the envelope of receipts. One was a bar tab signed under the name Victor Langston, dated the very same night. My father hadn't lied, he wasn't the only one there. I wrote down every detail, then copied the file to 2 more USBs. I kept one in my coat pocket, the other hidden under my desk. This evidence could not disappear. That night, I ate dinner in silence. Victor kept glancing at me, smiling with his mouth but not his eyes. I knew he sensed something had shifted. "The meat's bland tonight, isn't it?" he said, lifting his fork to examine a rib. My mother chuckled softly. "I must have forgotten the salt. Or maybe Sadie sneaked a taste before it was cooked," Victor said, his gaze locked on me. I didn't answer. I stared right back at him, unblinking. I wanted him to see. I wasn't afraid anymore. After dinner, I washed dishes, rubber gloves on as usual. Victor stood behind me, his breath so close I could feel the heat against my neck. "I'm not stupid, Sadie," he whispered, too low for my mother to hear. "I'll know if some little girl is digging into the past." I kept scrubbing, my hands steady. "If that girl is smart," he tilted his head, "she'll understand that silence is the only way to survive in this house." I placed the last dish on the rack, peeled off the gloves, and turned to look him straight in the eye. "I'm not a child you can scare anymore," he chuckled, a cold laugh that never touched his pupils. I left the kitchen, went upstairs, and locked my door. That night, I sat by the window hugging my pillow, feeling my blood surge with every beat, not from fear, but from the fury rising inside me. The notebook, the USB, the receipts. They weren't fragments of memory anymore. They were keys. And Victor knew I had them. But I wouldn't back down. I would find a way to bring everything into the light, even if it meant facing the darkness he carried. I biked to school earlier than usual, my backpack strapped tight, the USB hidden deep inside my pencil case. All night I'd tossed and turned, my mind spinning with 100 thoughts. Part of me wanted to take the evidence straight to the police, but another part feared they wouldn't care about a teenager, the daughter of a man convicted of murder. I needed an adult. Someone who believed in my father. Someone not on my mother's side. The only person I thought of was Mr. Collins, the science teacher and coach of the school science team. He was quiet, even stiff, but I once saw him hand his jacket to a boy in the rain and quietly fix another student's bike after school without asking for thanks. My mother had once mentioned, back when she was still happy with my dad, Mark used to be close with that chemistry teacher, the gray-haired one with the old watch. They used to go fishing together all the time. I waited until recess, after my classmates had left. I stood, pencil case in hand, and walked to the lab where Mr. Collins was arranging trays of chemicals for the next period. "Mr. Collins, I need to ask you something important, but not about class." He looked up, brow furrowed. "Sadie, are you all right?" I nodded, though my stomach churned. I opened the case, pulled out the USB, and laid it gently on the desk. "Can you check this for me, to confirm if the video inside has been edited or not?" He studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, but I need to know why. Why are you asking me this?" I inhaled deeply and explained just enough that my father had been wrongfully convicted, that Victor was involved, that I had found the video at the old house. I didn't tell everything, but I didn't avoid the truth either. Mr. Collins never interrupted once. When I finished, he gave a short nod, pocketed the USB, and said, "Meet me in the equipment room at 3 o'clock. Don't let anyone know." The whole afternoon I sat restless, my skin feverish. Every time Victor's face flashed in my mind, I felt hands around my throat. At 3 o'clock, I knocked softly on the small door at the end of the lab hall. Mr. Collins sat before the monitor, bluish light reflecting off his glasses. He motioned me inside and locked the door. I checked all the file metadata, no signs of tampering. The data was created the exact night of the incident, no compression, no editing software. I exhaled, my throat loosening. Then, do you believe my father is innocent? He stayed quiet for a moment, then said gently, if that video is real, then Mark isn't the killer. I pressed my lips together, tears burning at my eyes. What should I do next? You need an adult to stand with you if you want this to come out. But Sadie, this is serious. If that man is as dangerous as you say, you must be very careful. Do you have backups? I nodded. I copied 2 more. One's at a friend's house, the other's in my school locker. Mr. Collins looked at me, a mix of admiration and worry. You're sharper than most kids your age. But a man like him won't sit still. I clenched my fists. I can't wait. My dad is in prison for something he didn't do. Mr. Collins opened a drawer, pulled out a new USB, copied the file, and said, I'll contact an old friend. A retired cop from Internal Affairs. But we'll need time. You must be patient. I nodded, a small spark of hope lighting in the darkness that had swallowed me for months. I left the room lighter, but I hadn't gone far when a shadow stopped me cold at the end of the hall. Victor. He leaned against the wall, hands in pockets, that half-smile always tinged with mockery. Sadie, seems like you've been staying late at school these days. I froze, forcing myself to stay calm. I've been studying more, biology test coming up. He stepped closer, eyes flicking toward the pie, room behind me like he already knew. And you've been studying with Mr. Collins? I met his stare. He's my teacher. I asked him for help. He smiled, but his eyes stayed empty. A girl should be careful. Sometimes curiosity leads to trouble. I didn't reply. I turned and walked fast to the bike racks, palms slick with sweat. That night, I got an email from Mr. Collins. Just one line, don't worry, everything is still under control, but don't meet me at school again. I read it a dozen times. Then I shut the laptop, pulled the USB from my bag, and clenched it in my hand. I knew he had been threatened. Victor had gotten ahead of me, and I was running out of time. The next morning, after that brief email, I sat by the window, staring blankly at the backyard. The sky was heavy gray, dragging my thoughts lower. The words from the message still carved themselves in my mind, letter by letter. I believe your father is innocent. Meet me at the train station at 5 o'clock. No name, no explanation. Just a strange Gmail address with numbers and a small sunflower icon as the profile picture. I didn't reply. I didn't tell anyone. Because that morning I had something else to face. My mother. She was already up, wearing a long-sleeved blouse, her hair tied neatly as if for an important meeting. But her eyes were red and swollen, proof of a sleepless night. Sit down, Sadie. I stood in the kitchen, milk glass still in my hand. We need to talk. Right now. I sat, silent. She placed my laptop on the table, not as it used to be. The screen shattered, the hinges broken, like it had been smashed with something heavy. You hid this under your bed. I didn't answer. My eyes stayed on the shards scattered around the chair legs. You've been contacting your father, after everything he's done. After all Victor has done for you. Her hands clenched, fingers white from the strain. You've disappointed me, truly. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. You once said you loved Dad. Loving a man is one thing, my mother answered, her voice trembling. But forgiving a murderer isn't love. I have to protect you, Sadie, whether you understand it or not. And that's why you smashed my computer? That's why I called West Pine Academy. I froze. A boarding program in Vermont, very strict but safe. High walls, psychologists on staff, no phones, no internet, no negative outside influences. My voice cracked. You're locking me up? Not locking you up. Healing you. I sat motionless, the milk in my hand turning cold. She stood, closed the folder on the table, her hands shaking. You're leaving Monday. The plane ticket's booked. That whole day, I never left my room. Every sound outside was crushed by the suffocating wall of despair. When the sun touched the horizon, I finally pulled out the backup phone I had hidden under the mattress pad. An old, sluggish thing that could only open email through a slow browser. I reread that line dozens of times. I believe your father is innocent. Meet me at the train station at 5 o'clock. Nothing else. But something in me knew this person wasn't dangerous. They knew more than I imagined. I packed a light backpack, slipping in a copy of the USB, a scan of the notebook, some saved up cash, and a change of clothes. My mother was in the shower. Victor wasn't home. I slipped out the back door, quiet as a shadow, into the damp October twilight. The station was nearly a 20-minute walk from my house. I arrived just as the big clock struck 5 o'clock. The stranger wasn't there yet. I sat on the wooden bench, clutching my backpack tight to my chest, eyes fixed on the front doors. 5 minutes passed. Then 10, then 20. I was about to think I'd been set up when a voice came from beside me. Sadie? I turned. A woman in her 30s, light brown hair tied back, holding a small purse and a folder of papers. Her face was oddly familiar, not because I had seen her before, but because I had seen her picture the woman standing next to the man who had been killed at the bar. She sat down beside me, her gaze direct. My name is Jenna. My brother was the man your father was accused of killing. My throat went dry. I said nothing. But I never believed he did it. Why? Jenna pulled from her purse a stack of worn papers, printed copies of leaked emails from the investigation. One was an early officer's note from a cop who had since retired. Victor Langston was once arrested for assault in Oregon, but the case was dropped after the accuser suddenly withdrew. My brother told me a man had been following him for weeks before the murder. He used to come to the bar, never drank anything except whiskey. You think it was Victor? I do, but I had no proof. And after my brother died, everyone just wanted the case closed as fast as possible. I opened my backpack, took out the USB and the photo prints from the video, and handed them to Jenna. She examined each one, her face shifting. Oh my God, it's him. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, a train whistle echoed like a warning bell. Jenna turned to me, her tone firm. You can't go home. If Victor knows you have this evidence, he won't stay quiet. I nodded. Jenna took my hand, squeezing hard. From now on, I'll help you. Not just for your father, but for my brother, too. If you're brave enough to expose him, then I have to be strong enough not to quit. I don't know how long I held her hand. I only knew that someone stood on my side. Not out of duty, not out of obligation, but because she had lost, just like me, and because truth couldn't stay buried forever. We left the station close to 6 o'clock, stopping first at a small cafe by the old tracks, instead of heading straight to Jenna's apartment. She ordered a black tea. I asked for water. We sat on the porch, the fading light spilling across the wooden table, the air still and heavy. I could hardly believe I was sitting here, across from the sister of the man my father had been accused of killing. Jenna set her phone on the table, scrolled through her gallery, then stopped at a family gathering photo. This man, she pointed to someone in the back, wearing a cap and sunglasses. I didn't realize it was Victor back then, but comparing it with recent photos, I'm sure it's him. I leaned in. Tall, thin, square jaw, eyes narrowed like he was hiding. The unease inside me grew sharper. My sister Naomi worked at a nursing home. She was kind, always helping, never hurting anyone. Weeks before she died, she told me about a man who lingered outside the gates, sometimes sending flowers with no name. She thought it was just a quiet admirer and ignored it. Jenna's voice dropped. 3 weeks later, she was dead. Police said stroke. No outside force, no suspicion. But Victor, he showed up at the funeral. Sat in the corner, a stranger to everyone, then vanished after the service. A chill ran down my spine. Are you sure it was him? Jenna didn't answer right away. She quietly pulled a death certificate copy from her wallet, along with another photo of Victor in a blue-gray shirt, standing with two men at a party, glass of liquor in hand. She zoomed in on his face, then used a facial search app to compare it with hotel registration in Colorado. The name that appeared was Gavin Cross. The image matched Victor. Same crooked smile, same empty eyes. He's changed names at least 3 times, Jenna said. First in Arizona as Alan Hurst, then in Texas as Daniel Marks. And now, he's Victor Langston, the man your mother plans to marry. I gripped my glass of water. The pieces formed a horrific puzzle. Each name a shard of the tragedies he left behind. Why hasn't anyone caught him? Jenna shook her head, eyes weary. No one connected the dots. In each state, he was careful. No obvious evidence. He targeted people with questionable pasts, easy to frame. Like your dad, a man who had been drunk a few times, in bar fights. Too easy to turn into the perfect suspect. A shiver ran through me. Powerless anger burned in my chest. The more I learned, the clearer it was. My father hadn't just been unlucky. He had been chosen. A deliberate target in a chain of planned setups. We left the cafe, walked a short distance, then took a cab to Jenna's apartment in the south of the city. She lived alone in a neat place crammed with books and files. Walls plastered with photos, maps, and red-marked notes. On a whiteboard, in big letters. I'd all started there. How long have you been tracking him? I asked as Jenna locked the door. Almost 2 years, but I never had enough proof. And you're the key. She pulled out a chair, set her laptop down. We need to compile everything, plot his movements, match the incidents and overlaps. We worked for nearly 3 hours, pinning photos, marking maps, cross-checking timelines. It felt like peeling away the thick masks Victor had built. Near midnight, as we paused to rest, I checked my phone. No messages from Mom, but a notification flashed from the tiny hidden camera under my desk at home, the one I had set to capture still images. Movement. I opened it. Victor was standing in my room, lights on, his eyes scanning the books. He moved to the desk, opened drawers, flipped through old papers. Then he crouched, peeled the tape from under the desk where I had once hidden the USB. Nothing there. But his face showed no surprise. He looked around, then paused at the mirror, adjusting his collar. Finally, he leaned close to the camera, staring straight at me. You think you're clever, don't you, Sadie? I held my breath. We can't play hide and seek forever. The video ended. I set the phone on the table, palms icy. Jenna sat still, watching me. You need to go home. You can't go alone. I need the original notebook. It's still hidden in the bathroom. If he finds it, everything's gone. Jenna nodded. We'll plan carefully, only if it's safe. From now on, every step could be watched. I looked out the window. Streetlights flickered weakly. Inside, something shifted. Not fear. Resolve. Victor could control the house. He could manipulate my mother. But he couldn't control the truth. He couldn't silence everyone. And now, I wasn't fighting alone. My mother set a small suitcase on the living room floor, the zipper hissing shut. She looked at me with a mix of confusion and steel, masking her discomfort as she said, "We're going away for a few days. Just a short trip, a change of pace." I stood still, gripping the strap of my backpack. Victor walked out of the kitchen, wearing a beige coat and a scarf, as if it were snowing instead of just a light chill. Booked already, 2 adjoining rooms, hotel right by the lake, very pretty. He winked at my mother. This is the time for us to reconnect, a real family. I nodded, saying nothing. Inside my backpack were 2 USB drives, a printed copy of all my father's emails, a backup phone, and a small can of pepper spray Jenna had secretly given me. I couldn't refuse this trip. But I could prepare. We arrived at the hotel close to 7 o'clock in the evening. A light rain fell, the street lights reflecting off the wet pavement like a warped mirror. I stepped into the lobby, trying to keep my breathing steady while my heart raced. The receptionist handed my mother two key cards, rooms 306 and 308. Mom and Victor were in 306. I was assigned 308, right next door. When I opened the door, I found a simply furnished room, single bed, desk, and a small window looking out onto the back parking lot. I set my backpack on the chair, quickly checked the locks, the latch, and the deadbolt. I pulled out my phone and texted Jenna, at Silver Lake Hotel, room 308, Victor in 306. He's watching. The message sent. No one knocked on my door that night. My mother sent a short text. Dinner at 8, ground floor. I replied, feeling tired, going to rest early. Truth was, I wasn't tired. I just couldn't sit across from Victor, under those yellow lights, pretending everything was normal. Close to 11 o'clock, when the hallway grew quiet, I sat up, turned on the video mode on my phone, and placed it on the desk, facing the door. I wasn't sure why. Instinct, maybe. I had just pulled up the blanket when a knock came, 3 sharp raps. I didn't respond. Then the sound of a keycard swipe, denied. Another swipe. Then his voice, low but clear through the crack. Sadie, open the door. I just want to talk. I lay still, unmoving. A third swipe, denied again. A mutter, a curse. Then footsteps retreating to the room next door. I sat up, grabbed my phone, checked the video. His face wasn't visible, but his voice was clear. I saved the clip, gave it a coded name, and sent it to 3 different email accounts. I was typing notes when muffled noise carried through the wall. Victor's voice, hoarse and drunk, on the phone with someone. That girl, she's digging too much. I told you, the old job isn't finished. If she slips away, everything blows. I pressed my ear to the wall, straining, just like the others. She thinks she's some hero. But if I have to deal with her, then I deal with her. Not like I haven't before. My skin went cold. Everything Jenna had told me was playing out again, only this time, I was the target. I hit record. Same phone, set to audio, placed by the wall. For 20 minutes, he rambled, half drunk, half calculated, as if reporting to someone or reminding himself of what came next. When it went quiet, I stopped the recording, sent the file to Jenna with a message. You need to back this up. I don't think he'll let me leave here alive. The message was read 2 minutes later. Listen, Sadie, be careful. He's speeding things up. I'll send someone by morning. Avoid all contact if you can. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window all night, eyes on the hallway. Footsteps came and went, doors opened and closed far away, but no one knocked again. Around 4 o'clock in the morning, I heard my mother's door open. Her sleepy voice floated out. Victor, where are you going? Out for a smoke. Go back to bed. I pressed myself against the wall. 4 a.m. in the cold rain. What was he really doing? I pulled the USB from my bag, tucked it into my pant leg, threw on a hoodie, and cracked the door just enough to peek out. Victor stood at the 3rd floor hallway, phone in hand, the other shoved in his coat pocket. I'll take care of her before she talks. 1 step late and we're all dead. I slipped back, shutting the door softly. Now I was sure I had to leave this hotel before sunrise. Or before Victor realized he'd lost control over me. I left just before 6 o'clock, dawn still gray. The rain had stopped, but the pavement still glistened. I took nothing but my backpack and the backup phone. My mother was still asleep or pretending. I didn't know anymore. Only that if I hesitated, I'd never leave safely. I grabbed a cab to the supermarket parking lot on the south side of the city, the emergency meeting spot Jenna and I had agreed on last night. She said a friend at a law office could verify the recording's authenticity and advise the next step. When I arrived, Jenna stood by a dark blue pickup truck, coat pulled tight, coffee steaming in her hand. As I stepped out of the cab, she gave a faint smile, but her eyes showed exhaustion. Get in, there's something you need to hear." I climbed into the passenger seat. Jenna locked the doors, opened the glove compartment, and pulled out a folder. "This is testimony from someone who worked with Victor under another name in Georgia. He described Victor's exact habits, even how he always used burner phones to hide calls. Georgia police once suspected him in a disappearance case, but never had enough evidence." I opened the folder, scanning the faint type, piecing together every word. But before I could ask, a sound behind the truck made us both stiffen. Footsteps, fast, deliberate. I turned just as the driver's door was yanked open. Victor stood there, face stone cold, rain dripping from his hair. "I warned you, Jenna. You should have stayed away from her." Before Jenna could react, Victor ripped her out of the truck. Coffee spilled over my hand. Scalding, I lunged after them, shouting, "Let her go." Victor slammed Jenna against the truck, one hand clamping her shoulder, the other raised as if to strike. I screamed louder, my voice echoing across the empty lot. "Somebody, help!" A security guard rushed from the store. A man pushing a cart stopped and turned. Victor immediately let go, stepped back, hands raised like he was the victim. "She's out of control!" He pointed at Jenna, voice sharp with fake outrage. "She stormed into my truck, threatened to ruin my life and my fiancé's. I only defended myself." I stood between them, gasping. Jenna clutched her shoulder, pale but holding on. "He's been following me for 3 days," she told the guard. "He's a fraud. He's hurt people before. I have proof." Police arrived within 10 minutes. A male and female officer listened to both sides. I showed them the recording of Victor at 4 a.m., but he sneered, staring at them. "Sounds like me, sure, but how do you know? Could be some fake voice app from the internet. Kids are clever these days. They make things up. I'm just a man trying to rebuild a family after my ex-wife left." I gripped my phone tighter. The female officer turned to me. "Do you have any other proof?" "I have video of him trying to open my hotel room. Emails. My dad's journal." "Where's the journal?" "At home. I hid it in the bathroom." She nodded, writing it down, but I could see their eyes shifting from suspicion to caution. Still not enough to hold him. Victor stood with hands in his pockets, calm and chilling. When the officers turned away to jot notes, he leaned close to me, voice low enough only I could hear. "Your mother will never believe you, no matter what you say." And he was right. When we got home, Mom was waiting in the living room, her white blouse still on, face tired. On the table sat the West Pine files, thicker than before. "Where were you?" I stood by the door, mud still on my clothes from the parking lot scuffle. "I met Jenna. And the police." Mom went silent, then sighed. "You're going too far. She's the victim's sister. You're letting her drag you into lies." "Do you think I don't see?" I stepped closer, pulled out my phone, played the recording. "Listen, that's Victor. He admitted everything. He said he'd take me out if I didn't stay quiet." She didn't take the phone. She only turned to the window, back to me, voice raw. "You're paranoid. Victor isn't like that. He's changed." I swallowed hard. "You're really sending me away." She turned back. "Next week, West Pine already accepted you. They'll help stabilize you. You won't be under Jenna's influence anymore." My fists clenched, tears burning but not falling. "You just want to lock me away so you can stay blind. You're scared if the truth comes out, you'll be dragged down with him." She didn't answer, just turned back again. I stood frozen, heart heavy with anger and pain. And in that moment, I realized I had no home to return to. If I didn't fight back, Victor would win. Not just with words, but with the silence he forced around me, my mother, the whole world, turning away one by one. But I still had the evidence, and I wouldn't let him bury it, not this time. I couldn't sleep that night before I was to be sent away. The clock crept past 3 o'clock, then 4. Every sound was louder, the wind through the window crack, the creak of pipes, my heartbeat pounding like a warning drum. I lay still, questions spiraling. If I left tomorrow, Victor would have time to erase it all. The police still had no grounds to hold him. Mom clung to her blind faith. I couldn't let what Jenna and I uncovered disappear. At dawn, while Victor and Mom left to have breakfast with the local pastor, I feigned being sick so I could stay behind. Mom didn't suspect, only told me to pack for West Pine. I smiled faintly, closed the door, and the moment the car left the driveway, I sprinted to the garage. Stacks of old boxes, shelves stained with oil, that damp smell. But one corner always felt off, the brick wall behind the tool cabinet. Something didn't match. I pulled everything aside. Found a brick lighter than the rest. Pressed it. A safe, small but solid. Built into the wall, chest height. I grabbed my phone, typed quickly to Jenna. I found a safe. Come now. 15 minutes later, she arrived. Beads of sweat on her forehead, her brown hair tied back neatly. She carried a small lock-picking kit hidden in her purse. "Are you sure?" Jenna asked, her eyes serious on me. I nodded. "If there's anything here proving who he really is, it's inside this." She crouched down and began working the tools into the lock. After nearly 10 tense minutes, a soft click sounded. The safe door creaked open. Inside were 2 compartments. The top held 3 different passports, each with a different name and face, but all unmistakably Victor. Beneath them lay a handgun wrapped in a black cloth. 2 magazines lay separately, the faded year of manufacture, still visible on their casings. Jenna pulled everything out, and my heart pounded wildly. "And this," she whispered, pulling out a thick, dark brown leather journal, pages filled with scrawled handwriting. We opened it together. On the very first page, V. Carter, notes. The lines that followed made my blood run cold. June, met Thomas at the education conference in Raleigh. Still vulnerable, he suspects me but hasn't acted. August, using Sadie's trust to draw Thomas back in. Need more time to erase all original files at his company. The further I read, the more I shook. Each plan, each staged interaction, every excuse Victor crafted to isolate my father from his colleagues, from his reputation, from his own sanity. He wrote it out like a lab experiment. On another page, there was even a note about hush money paid to someone with the initials J.H., complete with dates and a Nevada bank address. My God, Jenna hissed through her teeth. This man isn't just a liar, he's a predator. I sank onto the cold concrete floor, my head spinning between panic and fury. But before I could process it all, the front door upstairs slammed. Victor was home. Jenna quickly shut the safe, handed me the gun still wrapped in the cloth, her voice low and urgent. "If anything happens, you run. Don't look back." I hadn't even answered when footsteps echoed down the stairs. Victor stopped at the garage door, his eyes narrowing as he saw me near the shelf, clutching the journal. His expression shifted surprise, then rage, then something far more dangerous. "That is mine," he said, his voice low but trembling with fury. I stepped back. Jenna moved in front of me. "We're taking this to the police," she declared. Victor said nothing. He stepped forward slowly, eyes locked on me. His right hand slid silently into his coat pocket. I saw a flash of metal. "Sadie, give me the journal. Run now," Jenna whispered. Before I could react, Victor pulled out a folding knife and lunged toward me. For a split second, I thought everything would end right there until a voice cut through the air. "Victor!" The garage door burst open. Denise stood there, grocery bag dangling from her hand, staring wide-eyed at Victor holding a knife, the safe gaping open behind him, and me, cowering against the wall. We all froze. No one spoke. Denise stepped in, trembling, her lips quivering. What is happening here?" Victor turned, quickly dropping the knife to the floor, his expression shifting as if his fury had never existed. "Denise, let me explain. What is that?" She pointed at the passports. "Weapons, handwritten notes? Why is there a gun in my house? And why is my daughter shaking like that?" I looked at my mother, my whole body still tense, but my voice broke out. Because he's not who you think. He set up everything. He framed Dad. He planned to hurt me too. Jenna stepped forward, handing my mother the journal. See for yourself. The proof is all here. Denise took it, flipping through a few pages. Her eyes widened, then filled with tears. She looked up at Victor, and for the first time, her gaze wasn't trust, it was fear, emptiness. Victor tried stepping closer. I was framed. They stop, my mother said, her voice cracking. Get out of my house, now. Victor froze. Then, realizing he had no way out, he turned and stormed off, not looking back. I didn't collapse. I didn't cry. I just stood there, still clutching the cloth-wrapped gun, my heart falling into a bottomless void. Everything had shifted, not just in my mother's eyes, but in the whole balance of this fight. The door to truth was open now, and no one could shut it again. Later, I sat with my mother in the living room, the air so heavy it felt like even the dust was holding its breath. Denise hadn't spoken since Victor left. She just sat stiff in the chair, her pale hands twisted together, her blank eyes fixed on the wedding photo on the wall. A photo of her and Victor taken just 3 months earlier, her eyes filled with hope, his face smiling as if mocking us all. Jenna sat nearby, clutching the fabric bag now stuffed with evidence from the safe. On the table lay the journal, the 3 passports, the carefully wrapped gun, and the USB Victor had hidden behind the shelf panel, which Jenna discovered after noticing the strange scratches. I inhaled deeply, then opened the recording app on my phone. There's something you should hear. I pressed play the recording of Victor threatening me in the garage before she walked in. His cold voice filled the room. You think you're clever? Everything I've done is for a bigger purpose. You and that old man should have stayed quiet, but it doesn't matter. Once you're gone, everything goes back to order. Denise shuddered. She covered her mouth, her shoulders trembling. Her eyes went vacant, as if watching her entire world collapse. I had never seen her like this, not when I begged her to believe me, not when Jenna recounted the parking lot attack, not even when she signed the papers to send me to West Pine. But now, the truth was undeniable. I lived with him, she whispered. Let him sleep under the same roof, beside my daughter. I said nothing. I let her sink into the wreckage of her own regret, because no one else could pull her out. As the recording ended, the front door burst open. 2 police officers stepped in, with Jenna holding her phone, and the lead officer holding an arrest warrant. We received a report from Miss Jenna Ellison, the man said calmly, along with voice evidence, handwritten notes, and a USB with detailed records of criminal activity connected to Mr. Victor Carter. I stood, pointing toward the safe. There are forged documents, weapons, and passports. The USB holds financial transfers tied to Nevada and Colorado, accounts and images of past victims he targeted. The officer nodded, signaling his partner to ready the cuffs. Where is Victor Carter now? He left less than 10 minutes ago, Jenna replied quickly. Headed toward Chestnut Road. We'll issue an emergency alert immediately. Less than 30 minutes later, Victor was arrested at a gas station just over a mile away. He had been trying to board an interstate bus, carrying a bag stuffed with tax evasion files and a second USB not yet decrypted. When restrained, he said nothing. He just smiled, a thin, paper-cut smile, silent, slippery, chilling me to the bone. 1 week later, my father was released. I waited outside the state prison with a bouquet and a rented car. His hair was grayer, his frame thinner, but his eyes still steady. When he saw me, he didn't run, didn't cry. He just stopped and looked at me for a long moment. You've grown. I laughed through a tight throat, and I kept my word. We hugged. No words needed. Denise didn't come. After Victor's arrest, my mother locked herself in her room for days. I didn't blame her. Jenna came by often, helping me clean up, handling paperwork to cancel West Pine. The police kept the main evidence, but I held on to the journal, not for revenge, but to remember. One afternoon, Dad and I went to the police department to turn in the remaining USB. The investigator, a woman named Michelle, handed us a fresh file. Miss Sadie, Mr. Thomas. I need to tell you, Victor Carter wasn't his real name. She paused, then slid out a photo from 2002. Victor or someone who looked exactly like him standing beside another man, holding a Nevada prison ID board. He's been on federal watch since 2003 for financial fraud, identity theft, and ties to an interstate criminal organization targeting families in education, law, and media. A chill ran down my spine. Michelle continued, "What you tating my uncovered is only the surface. We're reopening dozens of old cases linked to the names Jack V. Carter, James Holloway, and Victor Darnell. They're all the same man." I looked at my father, then back at the file victims' photos. Addresses scattered from Arizona to Michigan, large sums transferred between shell companies. A web. A network. "We don't know what he planned next for your family," Michelle said softly, "but maybe you stopped something worse from happening." I said nothing. I just took the file and left with one enormous unanswered question. Dad and I moved to a small town north of Seattle. Every morning he brewed coffee and I watered the garden. Life slowly found a quieter rhythm. Denise called sometimes, but I wasn't ready to talk much. Jenna stayed in the city and we kept in touch. Some nights I opened Victor's journal again, not to feed fear, but to remind myself that even in the calmest worlds, storms waited to break. And sometimes, the only one standing between you and the abyss is yourself. Life is full of crossroads that seem small but open either a pit or an escape door. I once thought I was just a girl no one listened to. But the truth is, when you trust your instincts, when you follow what your heart insists, sometimes, you become the one who changes the fate of those you love most. Have you ever been misunderstood by the very person you trusted most? Have you ever stood between silence for safety and speaking up for truth? Share your thoughts with me. I believe everyone has their own way of seeing it, and I'd love to hear yours. And if you find family stories, psychological turns, and the power of truth worth reflecting on, follow this channel and join me as we keep uncovering life's hidden layers. Because sometimes the things no one notices are the very things that change a life.